Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depends where you're located. My name is Alex, and I would like to welcome you to our webinar. This time, we are going to talk about the backup and restore using the OpenNebula integration with the Rsync. I hope I'm audible and you can see my screen. So, just in case, drop something to the comments, like, exclamation mark, @sign, maybe, some numbers, or just simply hi. That would be enough. So I can read that I'm audible and all's good. I'll wait for a couple of seconds and then we will proceed with the topic. All right. So let's assume that everything's fine and let's begin. Now, our agenda for today is the quick overview of the implementation or integration with the Rsync, and then we will have the actual demonstration. Now, the integration with the Rsync, let's talk about the benefits of that. Like the first thing first, it is available with the community edition and we with the enterprise edition. So pretty much it's available across the editions. Secondly, it's the most, I don't want to say like primitive, but um, it's the easiest way how to start backup your things, right? Because rsync is pretty much packed with any Linux distribution that, I mean, popular Linux distribution, not trimmed down, but anything that you take like Ubuntu, Alma, I know SUSE, whatever. So the rsync is pretty much always packed with it, and is part of the default tool chain. That's what makes it so accessible. And the only thing that you would need to do is to have some add-ons on top of that. Is install the QEMU utils that comes with QEMU-img command line, and that's it. So that's pretty much everything that is required to have that integration, right? So the architecture is pretty much simple, right? As you can see, we don't have any additional, let's say, server that would somehow needs to be installed, or pretty much any additional software, any other third party control point. Nothing's there. What you need is, well, OpenNebula front end and kvm host. Well, obviously, because you would like to run some VMs. And then you would need to have the rsync backup server, right? So the rsync backup server, well, it can be a multitude of things, right? So it can be just plain straightforward server with a couple of disks, maybe something more complex. But initially, it runs the some kind of the Linux OS flavor, and it has the necessary tooling. That's pretty much it, right? So, of course, underneath there might be some complexity when it comes to storage. There might be some other, kind of clustering, maybe solutions or whatever. But in general, the target is just the Linux OS server with enough of disk space, obviously, to host your backups. And that's pretty much it, right? So you don't need anything more, just a thing that you see on the screen. It's the very simplistic integration that doesn't require a lot of things. Although there are some notes to talk about. As I mentioned, it's available in both the community and the enterprise editions. So that's pretty much a nice benefit. That doesn't matter on which side you are. You have an ability to back up, right? again, I would like to stress out that it's the easiest way to start backing up your virtual machines. Some other implementations may require some more complex solutions or a little bit more of things installed, a little bit more configuration. The Rsync would be the most simplistic one, right? So the target server, if we go back a little bit, so the Rsync backup server, I'm going to refer to that as the target server, right? So the target server must have the rsync and qemu-img, which on, like, let's say Ubuntu distribution, like Debian like distributions, would be can be installed using the qemu-utils package. So it comes part as that package. There are some additional things, right? So the var-lib1, the directory that you have on a target server, um, must be created. It's actually var-lib1 data stores, but like the var-lib1 is the initial directory that must be there, and it should be pretty much the user that you're going to use on a target server, as let's call that as a backup user, right? So that backup user supposed to have read write access to that directory. And well, I do it simplistically by just changing the full ownership of that directory and even setting this directory as that user's home directory. So, that probably is the easiest way to go. Of course, you do you, and you can do whichever way you wish. But my take, that would be the most again simplistic approach if we would like to simplify things. Then just make it as the home directory for that user. The name of that user pretty much doesn't matter, right? So you can create the user called one admin as well on your server, right? On your rsync backup target server, but it can be anything else like backup dash admin, backup dash user, just simply, backup user, whatever floats your boat. Yeah, you can have this user because, well, that's you would need to input that user at some point. Then you have the another thing that must be there. So OpenNebula runs its own processes. Doesn't matter if it's on the front end or if or is this one being launched on the on the hypervisor, right? So it runs uh, with the one admin operating system user permissions. So the user is one admin, and the connection that will be established from your hypervisors or from your front end would use that one admin user, right, as the source user. So what you need to make sure is that the public key of the one admin user is enrolled into that backup users dot ssh authorized underscore keys, right? So from the hypervisor and or all hypervisors, and what's also necessary from the front end as well. Otherwise, the integration is not going to work, right? So you would need to distribute these keys. Once again, you can do it manually. You can use any kind of automation to do that. So it is totally up to you how to approach that. But the basic is obviously do it manually, right? So these are like the most important notes about this integration. So, well, let's start to configure the thing. Now, if you are going to follow along, make sure that you have, just in case, the command line open, so you have the secure shell connectivity to your server. Make sure that your OpenNebula graphical UI Sunstone is available, and your target node, the target server, the one that will be used as the backup destination, also has the necessary tools and is at least reachable, right? So if you don't have one, or if you're running everything on a one single, test bed, then well, you can use the local one, right? So you can set up the KVM, you can set up the graphical UI, and you also can set up the front end and the backup target on the same node for test purposes. In my case, I have three different nodes. One is acting as the front end control plane. One is acting as the KVM, and we can verify that by going into the infrastructure host. You can see that there is the KVM hypervisor, and then I have one host that is acting as the target server. Right. Okay, so let's begin. And uh, to start with, I need to distribute those keys, right? So I have um, the OpenNebula front end, and I have the KVM hypervisor. However, the keys are not yet enrolled to my backup node. So that is something that I'm going to do right now. And in order to make it, I need to connect via the secure shell. But of course, if I have any key in the memory, let me delete that. So, and let me connect. All right. So I'm in, and I've switched my user to one admin. So I'm the one admin system user. Right. One admin on the front end node always has the secure shell public key, private and public key pair generated, because that's how the front end control plane can access all the KVM hypervisors. That's why we don't need to generate anything, right? We just need to copy the secure shell public ID. Of course, we can do it using the secure shell or SSH dash copy ID. And now we need to specify the user and the destination. Now, in my case, the destination is the following IP address, and the user that I've chosen is the backup admin. Right, so that's the user that I have configured specifically for the purpose of backing things up. Right, so let us try. Now the prompt for the password, which is again logical because well I don't have any key there. So open Nebula, the most secure password in the world. Open Nebula 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's interesting. Well, it tells that the backup admin password is wrong. Well, it's not a problem because I do have the uh, the key-based authentication, so we can just verify why it is not like that. Okay, let me so remove the key, right? Right, so the backup node is there. So let's change password for the. Okay, so backup admin is not there, which is strange. And it seems like the directory is also not there. which is once again a little bit weird. Okay, but it's not a problem, right? Because I can. Hence, that's why we had this. I had this minor issue, right? So that the user was not there, the directory was not there, and then the password was not set. So once again, it's not a problem, right? It's just a matter of running a playbook, and now we have the va.lib1 directory there, and of course the user backup admin is there, right? So that actually means that the password is also there. So let me try to do it once again. OpenNebula as the password, and we can see that the key was in fact enrolled. Well, minor mishaps. Sometimes they happen, sometimes they don't. So not a big deal. Okay, in order to verify that we've enrolled our key successfully, I need to connect to my backup node. And yes, indeed, the backup node is accessible without any password prompt. Good. So part number one is successful, right? The frontend's key has been enrolled. Now, the next thing is to enroll the key of the hypervisor, because hypervisor also needs to be able to connect to the backup server. Now, in order to do that, it's very simple step, right? So let's have a look. One host list. That is the IP address of my hypervisor. So just connecting to my hypervisor. So for hypervisor, there is one thing, right? So the hypervisor has no key pair generated, because at least for one admin user, because it had no reason to do that, right? And that is the extra step we need to perform. We need to make sure that the key is there. So once again, of course, you're supposed to automate that and use more advanced tools. But in my demo setup, it's fine to just go with manual input, right? So just create the just run the secure shell -keygen command line, and for this demonstration, we just skip and use everything on default. We can see that the key is there, and then the only thing that I need to do right now is to make sure the key has been enrolled. So copy ID, backup-admin, and then 51 158 119 83. Once again, input the password, and the key has been enrolled. Now, should we verify? Absolutely, right? So it's always better to verify to make sure that you can connect. And as you can see, the connection can be established. So the prerequisites are there, and we can establish the communication from the front-end node and from the KVM host, right? So if I would have like 3 hypervisors instead of 1, then I would need to enroll these 2 hypervisor keys as well. But since I'm only running only 1 KVM host, so only 1 hypervisor, then I don't need to obviously perform this step once again. Good. So the keys are there, meaning that both servers, both nodes can connect to the backup node. Now the next step is to create the data store. Now in this case, when you create a data store, it must be of a type backup, right? So as a reminder, we have three data store types, like four, but mostly if we don't talk about backups, then we have three, right? So we have system data store that keeps the disks of your virtual machines while they are running. Now you have the image data store. That's where your disks are stored at rest, so when they're not in use. And then the file data store for the plain text files. So these are three default data stores. And then these are three types that we have there. Now we need to use another type, which is the backup. So the data store type is the backup. Now rsync ds would be the name because, well, we need to name our data store somehow. And I'll just go with something like rsync ds. It doesn't matter that much, but it should be obviously easy identifiable. And then the storage backend. Now we have two. We have the Rsync and Rsync. In the scope of this demonstration, in this webinar, we are talking about the Rsync. So that is the storage backend that I need to select, right? So the Rsync type of the data store. Now the cluster, one or more, these would be, so you're obviously, as anything in OpenNebula, the data stores, virtual networks, hosts, they must be attached to a cluster, right? And a cluster typically is a set of homogeneous resources, and then you can perform various operations or migrations within the cluster, and so on and so forth. Now, all hosts supposed to have the same access to these resources, such as virtual networks and data stores. That's why you need to place it into the cluster. By default, all the resources are members of the default cluster. Well, hence the name default, right? That's where all your default resources are. And because we don't have any other cluster, then I need to select this one. Should you have one or more and other clusters that can connect to this data store, then you can add this data store to be a member of multiple clusters. Just make sure it is usable, right? To make sure that your your hypervisors can communicate with this data store to avoid unnecessary errors or some mishaps. But yeah, so by default we have only one cluster that's default, and that's where we are going to place the rsync data store. Now, the next thing is to configure the attributes. So these attributes can help you to fine tune, or let's say minimize the impact of the backup procedure uh, from um, from the backupping process, right? So let's say use less CPU, use less IOPS, right? So use different temporary directory where where the temp files are going to be added, and so on and so forth. So all that can help you to kind of make sure that the impact of the backup process would be as low as possible, or if you wish, it is going to run with some different settings. But by default, you need only two things, right? So the rsync host, which is the target target destination or the target server, and the rsync user, right? So that's where we were talking about the key based authentication. So as you can see, there is no place where you could place a password or input a password or anything like that. So which pretty much means that your key has to be there. Now the rsync host, let me copy the IP address. So that is the rsync host, and the rsync user is backup dash admin, right? So that would be my user. And we are finalizing the creation of the data store. Now, the first thing that you should have a look at is this, right? The data store will be monitored in a few moments. And if it shows you that there is like the 0 kilobytes out of 0 kilobytes, then it means that for whatever reason, your um, your front end cannot communicate with the backup data store, right? So the monitoring is not happening. And if you see it like that, so if it's not showing you the size, but it shows you like something like this, like we have on the system data store, the default local system data store, then the first thing you need to verify whether your settings are correct, right? So you can check this under the attributes, right? So whether the rsync user is correct, whether the rsync host is correct. If something is off, you should fix it before planning any backups, because if your control plane cannot communicate to the target server, to the rsync server, that then your backup procedure is going to fail, right? So keep that in mind. The first thing to check whether the monitoring of that of the data store uh, is successful. If not, well, that's the problem that you need to address first. If yes, then fine. That means that we can perform the backup right quick. Okay, so I consider this as a success because my monitoring of this data store is successful. So the next thing, let me spin a virtual machine. So I'll take the Ubuntu 2404, right, and I will instantiate, let's say, um, obviously I'm placing the percentage sign IDX here to just add the sequential number into the name of my virtual machine, right? The sequential number within the batch. And I'll deploy two virtual machines in this batch, right? Okay. So nothing else needs to be configured, right? It is good as is. Now we are currently in the process of deployment, so we need to wait for a bit. Now I have only one host, and by default, um, OpenNebula scheduler is going to place one VM at the host during one scheduling action, right? So the second VM will be picked up during the next scheduling action. That's why I need to wait for a little bit once again, because I have only one host. If I would have two hosts to run my VMs, then I would deploy these two in a single scheduling action. Right? Both VMs are kind of up and running, right? So we can use the VNC to check whether they're up and running, right? Right. So we can see that this virtual machine, the VM1, is up. Then the second virtual machine, let's have a look on this one, is also up and running, right? So both virtual machines are there. Now, uh, in order to start backing up, there are two ways how to back up, right? So the first is the most, well, I don't want to say simplistic, but the most straightforward is to just go there, create the backup configuration, and hit the backup button, or create a scheduled action, right? So for example, so the VM1, let's create the backup config. Because without the backup config, right, it doesn't make any sense, because, well, you need to pick different settings for your virtual machine. The first thing first would be the mode, right? So either you would proceed with full virtual machine backup, or you would like to have the incremental one, right? And that is kind of very important decision. Would you like to take a backup of a full VM every time you perform a backup, or should you go in the incremental mode? Now, again, you do you. It's up to you which way to go. However, in the scope of this demonstration, I'll proceed with the incremental one. Now, there are also how many backups do you want to keep, right? So, how many restore points you would like to have? Let's have 10. Once again, you do you, and you can configure what is required by your company guidelines or what makes you feel obviously secure and comfortable. Now, when you perform a backup, right? So that there are virtual machines that are running and they can work with the data and do all that thing. Now, obviously, you would like to freeze the file system during the backup time. Now, you can freeze it using the QEMU agent, or you can freeze it by placing virtual machine into the suspend mode. Now, once again, whatever is your preferred way to do that. Obviously, if we're speaking of QEMU agent, we need to make sure that the QEMU agent is running inside of that virtual machine. So that would need to be enabled separately. There is an option in the OpenNebula virtual machine template to enable the QEMU agent, right? Suspend would be a bit probably less, would require less things from the operating system itself, but maybe not that fast as QEMU agent, right? And that's something that I'm pretty much always warning anyone when it comes to QEMU agent and file system freeze with QEMU agent. If you're running the rel derivative like Alma Linux as the example that comes with the SE Linux enabled by default, then SE Linux may kill the QEMU agent when QEMU agent is going to start freezing the file system, which is basically prevent the read operations and force sync the memory on disk. So SE Linux by default may kill an agent, and this will result the backup failure. So what you need to do, you need to have a look in the policies. There is a default policy. I don't remember it from the top of my head, but there is a default SE Linux QEMU policy that allows these operations. So check this one first, because otherwise, well, your backup is going to fail because the file system. And then the incremental mode, so either the snapshot or CBT. By default, it is going to be CBT. Right. So that is the backup configuration, right? So you've configured the backup configuration. Now you are good to go with your custom settings. Now, once again, you can back up using this button from the VM Actions drop-down menu, or you can create a scheduled action that is going to perform the backup, right? And then you need to, well, tell that, okay, the action is the backup. Then you need to select the backup data store, right? Because it can be Rsync, can be, for example, Rsync. Yeah. So that's something that you need to pick up for this scheduled action, and then define whether this scheduled action is going to occur one time or you would like it to be periodic. Speaking of periodic, there is also the granularity. So how often to, in this case, to perform the backup, for example, daily, right? And then the end type. So when you would like the scheduled action to expire, would you like it to expire after certain date, after certain repetition time, or you would like it to be never? So never means pretty much the ongoing backups, right? So this is going to create a scheduled backup in the scheduled actions, and it will occur on a specific timer. Now, this one is kind of tied to a specific virtual machine, obviously, and covers only that virtual machine. So let me also initiate backup manually and see how this one goes. Okay, I need to select the data store, right? Weird. Okay, let's select the data store. And if we go into the information, so the info card, you can see that the state is backup. Please note that in the state backup, right, some actions may not be available, right? Such as reboot, power off, deploy, undeploy, suspend, and so on and so forth. Now, this, once again, to keep in mind, because we have multiple states, and when you perform some changes to a virtual machine, or something like backup, then the virtual machine becomes like unavailable for certain actions. So keep this in mind. I kind of would like to say it's a very important bit. Right. So then there is another option how you can backup, and this for this you can use the backup job, right? So the backup job, it would be a counterpart to it would be the counterpart to uh, the uh, the single virtual machine backup scheduled action, right? Because this one can cover multiple virtual machines at the same time. Now, creating a backup, you need to name the job. So, custom backup job, right? So, once again, the execution, it could be parallel or sequential. So, depends on the resources that you have and depends on the network bandwidth, because this in the end travels via the network, depends on the disk speed and so on and so forth. You may want to pick either of these two. Same for the file system freeze, same for the mode, right? So you can go either full or incremental, and the same setting for the number of the backup data points to be kept. So let's say 10. Now you need to provide a list of virtual machines, and you can either select them all, right? Or you can just input the ordered list with these virtual machine IDs yourself. Right. So then you pick up the data store, and on the last step, you need to add an action, right? And you can add multiple actions. So you can add multiple scheduled actions for this backup. For example, perform the daily backup, incremental daily backup, and then perform the mandatory, monthly backup, right? So then you can add these actions. So let's say when you add an action, it's pretty much what we saw at the individual virtual machine level, but this time it is just going to cover multiple virtual machines at the same time, right? So, for example, I know, let's do weekly, right? Every Sunday, right? And should never end. Now, this creates this action, and then it is going to be performed every Sunday. Right. So here we have the backup job, right? So the backup job right now has never been executed, hence the state, right? Not started yet, but you can kick the backup job uh, yourself manually, and then it is going to perform. Right. So all your backups are in fact images, right? Every virtual machine backup is an image. And if we are going to use the command line, one image list, then you are going to see there is an image located on the Rsync data store, right, with a certain size and the type of backup, right? So this is the kind of difference, I'd say, between the output of the command line versus the what we can have as an output in the Sunstone web UI. Because in Sunstone, if you go to images, you only can find the images of your disks, right? So the operating system type, data block, and well, ISOs that you've uploaded, like the CD-ROM, right? But you don't see any backup because in the graphical UI, the backups are visible under the backups section, while in the one image list output, you can see them all. In fact, that is how one image command line works because we treat everything as an image, right? So let's say if you would upload something to a files data store, it is also going to appear under the one image list, right? However, in the graphical UI, it has a separate section. So that's where I would like to give you a small hint. The filter option, right? Type equals BK, and then it pretty much simulates what you would have in the graphical UI when you navigate to the uh, backups tab, right? So, and I would say probably that is one of the places where filtering really helps and really should be heavily in use to just lower down the number of irrelevant images that you get when you're looking for, let's say, type of backup. So the naming, though, if we go to my VMs, right? So you can see that the name is VM-0, VM-1. So that these are the names of my virtual machines. However, if we go to the backups section, then there is no name, right? Because what we have here is the unique identifier of that VM. If we just go one VM list, right, you can see that number 3 is the ID, and that's what you can find here. Obviously, because ID is, first of all, unique. Secondly, ID remains attached to that virtual machine until you are going to terminate this virtual machine, while the name can be changed at any given time. That's why uh, the ID is 3. And then you have the date of the backup, right? So 17th December, 1639. So if we look at the increments, then that's you can see right now. Obviously, that is the full backup because it's the first time we perform a backup of this virtual machine. That's why it cannot be incremented yet, right? So we need to take the full backup first. However, the next one is going to be, in fact, incremental, right? So if we go to virtual machines and we will start the backup for the backup once again, then under the backup section, under the increments, there is going to be yet another one, right? So as you can see, here it is. So the size, then the also um, the unique identifier of this unique identifier of this backup. So every increment or every backup, doesn't matter is full or just an increment, it's going to have a unique identifier that consists of 6 alphanumeric characters. And this also how it's going to be represented on the uh, like physical disk, physical location itself. So if we will have a look into uh, the data stores 100 VM ID 3. So why 100 is right here? That is because we have the data store of type backup, right? So the rsync one, and it has the ID of 100, right? So that's why it's right here. The next three, this one represents the virtual machine ID. So the reference to the virtual machine ID of which the backup is, right? And that's where we have some directories, right? And these directories are referenced using this six character alphanumeric identifier. So let's go to, let's say, 87, right? And right here, you can see the snapshot of a disk plus not only a snapshot of a disk, you also can find the XML, right? So the unique, let's say it's the template, because when you are going to restore, you can restore it as the template plus disk, right? So then we should have this virtual machine template to be taken from somewhere. So then this is going to be here, right? So when you are restoring your virtual machine from the backup, and once again from the VM actions, you can backup once again. So and perform these backups as many time as you wish. Good. So the backup is there, right? So we can power down this virtual machine as this virtual machine is not needed anymore. You can backup it once again should you need to, right? So once again, go here. You can backup, but also what you can do, you can perform the in place restore and then pick the one that you would like to restore, right? And then pick the increment from the drop down list to return it back. So obviously, in order this one to be available, you need to power down the virtual machine first. So you power down, then you go and select restore the virtual machine. However, it's not always you need to do uh, um, the in place restore. Sometimes you may wish to restore it and to be deployed as a separate VM. For example, when you have some specific file that was modified, right? So you don't actually need to roll back that thing, but you may need that file. Maybe that's a configuration file or whatever, but you need it, right? So what you can do, you can restore uh, the backup, right? You can restore it as a separate disk plus a virtual machine template, right? So for that, you need to navigate to backups, click restore, then go to the next one, select the image data store, right? So because that's where it will end up. So we are going to move, copy or restore it to the image data store. So now the process has been initiated. You can see that currently the image is being locked, right? So it has 3 as the ID of that virtual machine, right? So the unique identifier of the increment, that specific increment that we are restoring, plus disk dash 0 means that it's pretty much the first disk. Should you have more than one disk attached to that virtual machine, then you would have 2. Additionally, you are going to have the virtual machine template right here, right? So, and this virtual machine template also going to have the virtual network configuration all the way down to the unique IP that was assigned to that virtual machine, right? So 172.17.200, that is the IP address that is currently leased to this virtual machine. So be very careful here, right? So you may want to clean up these network settings beforehand, and that you can do during the restore procedure, right? So you can click here. It's like do not restore the IP attributes, or completely do not restore NICs as well, right? So you may don't want to deploy any virtual machine with a network card. However, if you restored it with IPs and network cards accidentally, no worries. You always can remove the network card during the deployment of the virtual machine, or just go and edit the virtual machine template, because once again, it will end up as the virtual machine template as well. The virtual machine template name is going to be the same as the image, right? So it's going to contain the ID of the VM from which it is a backup, and then the unique increment or unique backup ID that is a 6-character alphanumeric name. Good. So, and sometimes you may not need the whole virtual machine, the templates, and so on and so forth. The only thing that you actually need is, well, one simple disk, right? So what you can do from the backup perspective, when you restore, you can restore the individual disk, and then you can see that there is another option appears, right? So now you need to select the disk. Now, well, again, in my case, that's just one, right? So I don't have many disks there, but should I have to, I would be able to pick only the specific disks to be restored. Now, here's the problem, right? So the disk has the same name, so probably I should rename this one first, right? So change the name to original, something like that. And then go and restore that disk once again. So individual disk, selecting the individual disk, placing it once again on the image data store, right? So because that disk is going to be at rest. Image name is already taken by the image 3. Oh, yes. Sorry. My bad. It's this one. Obviously, the image with the ID 3. Let's say 0, 0, right? And let me restore once again. Restore the individual disk. This one. Next, place it on the image data store. And here we go, right? So the image is in the process of getting restored, right? So yeah, and in this case, As you can see, the template remains only one, the one that I've restored 4 minutes ago. That's because when you restore individual disks, the template itself is not going to be restored. So that is something to kind of keep in mind when we um, performing the restoration. And obviously it takes time to get it back, right? Because it travels over the network, and it takes a little bit of time to get this one back. Good. So, and let's say I would like to deploy this virtual machine, right? So it was going to be VM restored. So under the network, I'm going to detach the network card once again because my has been already reserved to that virtual machine. And if I will try to allocate the same IP address, I'll get an error, right? So let it remains without the attached NIC. Or I can attach any other network, right, in case I need to, and then it's going to be attached to a different network. It's pretty much the same as instantiate any other virtual machine template, right? So it's not necessarily needs to be instantiated one-to-one. As with any other virtual machine template, you can override some settings like extend partitions, attach more disks, or reconfigure the network, or even reconfigure the resources like the amount of memory, the amount of virtual CPUs you have, and so on and so forth. So that can be reconfigured during that deployment. So because it effectively becomes just a regular template, right? Might be it has some settings that can be overridden though, but that's it. It's just a regular virtual machine uh, virtual machine template. Good. So you see that the virtual machine is there, and obviously the VNC is going to work as well, right? So the connection has been established, and we can see that it was in fact restored, right? So, however, it comes without any scheduled actions, right? So, if you need them, you should configure them first, right? And as with any restoration in place, right? You go to VM Actions, click Restore, go here, right? Pick the increment, so this one, and that's it. It's right now in the process of getting restored. Once it's restored, it becomes as it was, just a regular virtual machine. But this is in place restored, so it kind of removes your changes that you did on that virtual machine completely. Now, please also don't forget that should you need to, let me take another VM for that. Should you need to, you can snapshot a specific disk, right? Or turn it into an image, or snapshot the whole virtual machine. So keep that in mind that there are also not directly backups, right? But something that you can use obviously intermediately when you, for example, performing some updates, right? You would like to update your or reconfigure and you're not sure whether it goes well or not. You may take a snapshot and then restore from snapshot. That would be slightly faster because, well, snapshot is being kept nearby the actual disk, while the backup travels over the network to that backup target server. Good. Virtual machine was restored and it can be resumed. So it goes back live, back to the point when it was backup. In this case, when it was back up for the first time. Good. So, well, just to summarize, it's the easiest way how to start backing up with OpenNebula, right? So the Rsync backup is pretty much an easy to set up, easy to use. The only thing that we should always remember, right? So must have the QEMU IMG, that's part of the QEMU utils software package. Must have the varlib1 directory. That's where and must be owned by that backup user. And you should enroll the public keys. Without public keys, that it is going to fail, right? And public keys from the control plane from the front end is the must as well. Right. So let's go and check out your questions. All right. So, hi, Danny. Is there a way to perform a backup when the virtual machine is locked? Not that I know right now. Right now, if you lock the VM, then the backup cannot be performed. Yeah, that is a known fact. Right. Then we have another one. Is it possible to add multiple retentions? No, currently the retention period is being configured for any type of the backup. So right now, unfortunately, at least with the rsync, it is not possible. As of if I remember correctly, then the default it is not possible. Good. Thanks for your questions. Any other questions? Feel free to drop them into the chat. Right. So I'll be more than happy to answer these. And in case you would like to know a bit more about some fine tuning, let's say, I would encourage you to check out the documentation, right, that we have. And the documentation also covers some specific functionality, some specific tuning that you can apply in order, let's say, not to load the hypervisor resources during the backup. So, well, as usual, documentation is your friend. If you have any issues with that, no worries. We've got you covered, obviously, because, well, I would like to welcome you to join the community forum as well, because sometimes you may feel that you're stuck, right? But actually, the problem that you're facing was already resolved. So check out the forum. There might be a solution to your problem, and if not, well, obviously then feel free to open a new thread and start discussing that particular problem, because you might get help from the community and our engineers. They also looking into these issues from time to time and will be able to assist you or at least guide you, right? Because sometimes you may not have the message that we need to, the error message from the error log, so they can guide you where to look in to resolve an issue. So when using Ceph RBD backend with the rsync for the backups, is it possible to get the detailed where the backup is in the process? Well, I'm not sure. So I don't have the exact answer to this question. So I don't want to, misguide you here. But I doubt that you can. So I'm not sure about that. So I'd say probably we should build. You should build a test bed and verify that, because unfortunately, I'm very sorry, but I don't have the exact answer to this question. But again, thanks for that. It's something that is good to research myself as well. Good. Any other questions? So, just in case, would like to remind you that not the only webinar that we're running. We're running multiple different type of webinars, starting with this type of webinars regarding the some specific features, and also then we have webinars covering new things like sneak peek, sneak a peek on the new functionality in the upcoming versions, then what's new, then also sessions with our partners, with our customers, with our integration partners, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of things we cover and different variety of these things. So please, I would like to welcome you to also check out the upcoming webinars from my colleagues as well. Right. Do we have any other questions on these topics? Right. If there are no more questions, then thanks for attending. It was a pleasure. And then see you next time you in any other upcoming webinar. And since this probably is my last iteration of the webinar this year, then I would like to tell you that see you next year. Thank you and bye bye.